Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the One Talk podcast. You're here with your host, Ryan McCarthy. And today we are joined by Mel Yu. Mel is the founder of Ego Expo and MCO events. Ego Expo is the largest streetwear and lifestyle exhibition in Australia. Mel is an international speaker, as well as running events, building brands, coaching entrepreneurs, and was a provisional psychologist. Mel's also a mental health advocate and community ambassador for Lifeline Australia. And on today's episode, we discuss so many things, including business, mindset, behind managing our emotions with business and life, as we know that can be a tricky thing. And we also touch on mental health, public speaking, and all the work that Mel has done, plus so much more. There's so much value within today's episode, and it was such a great chat with Mel. In other news, if you could please leave this podcast a rating, it means so much in terms of helping this podcast grow, reaching a larger audience, and getting this message out there. So if you could do that for me, that would mean the world. But without further ado, let's welcome Mel.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. The marathon continue. Victory lap tonight, though. Victory lap tonight.
Welcome to the One Talk podcast with Ryan McCarthy.
The marathon continues. That's what you were saying.
Welcome, Mel. How are you doing?
I'm good, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Excited to have a chat and dive deep tonight.
Yes, me too. I'm really keen to dive deep into yourself, your journey, and also the work that you're doing now and what you continue to do and your mission as well. But a starting point that I really want to start with is because I feel like a skill set that is not truly appreciated in this world is the art of communication. And when I've listened to you through podcasts, when I've listened to you through doing speeches and keynotes and listening to you through the work that you do, one skill set that I feel like you have equipped yourself with really well and done a lot of work on is communication. I really admire your communication skills, the way you're really able to elaborate, the way you're able to articulate yourself, and also make an idea very audible from projecting it from your mind. So I want to start with like your communication. Was that something you had to master over time, or was it something that you felt like you had early on in life?
Oh, I'm really chuffed. Thank you. No one's actually ever said that or framed it like that. So I really appreciate it. Although somewhat, I think you do get feedback if you can communicate. People will let you know that that piece of content or that message or that piece of writing really landed. So I do appreciate you sharing that. But I don't know if we're ever just born into being a communicator, right? Like we're literally born from being a baby and we don't even have language. We cry for what we need. It's very emotive. And then as we grow, whatever society or environment we're in, that's, I think, where we learn to communicate. But for me, I've always been someone that loves to read or is a sponge for mentors, or I love language. I think also being of Chinese descent, ethnicity, and being, living in Australia and being born in Australia. So I'm Australian born Chinese. And I think with that, being bilingual immediately forces you to almost be able to communicate. So if I look back and connect the dots as early childhood, I think bilingual children or people that have multi-ethnicities or backgrounds, it might be a lot easier for them because we have to use that language and we have to assimilate into certain cultures. Otherwise, we're not going to get very far and get to where we want to go. Academically always been driven. And as I've developed my career in the speaking space or being really frontline in the way that I articulate or communicate, I think many leaders have to master the art of communication. If you're going to lead something or be in a senior role, whether you're an oracle, whether you can speak or whether you can write, I think it's critical that you master the art of communication. But is it taught? Absolutely. I don't think it's just a born innate skill that you can just kind of come up with. So you can definitely be taught.
That's epic. Yeah, I agree with that, because when I went to school, my teacher said to me at the time, I don't blame him, to be honest, but he said to me at the time that I won't be able to public speak because I used to avoid public speaking in front of the class, and I'd avoid doing any type of communication in front of people. But then I started the podcast, and then through that, I started speaking on stages. And then over time, you really find a way to curate the skill set and become better. But it's just by doing the action and learning it from people that are already doing that thing itself as well.
Yeah, I mean, they say, what is it? Public speaking is one of the most feared phobias that people have. People literally get full-blown anxiety and sweats and all of that. They'd rather do anything else than to step in front of a stage and speak. And it comes with practice, exactly like what you said. Like, I think a lot of people have fear around that, but then the more that you practice that skill, it's like a muscle. It just grows and grows and builds resilience around it.
What do you think like truly helped it? Like, do you think, because from doing a bit of research into the work you've done in the past, like I heard that you did on the phones for Lifeline. I've heard that you've done a bachelor's in psychology, I believe it was. I also heard that you were a case manager in for, what was the case manager for again?
Family
Sorry?
violence.
Family
Yeah, family
violence.
violence.
So do you feel like doing all these very complex situational jobs where you are faced with very confrontational matters, do you feel like that really helped you with communication because you have to think quick on the spot and really find a way to communicate?
100%. It actually goes earlier than the mental health psychology career. My dad had a Chinese restaurant when we came over here, and I think being thrown in the deep end and working in hospitality at, we say 14 and 9 months, but let's be real, I was a lot younger than that, working at the Chinese restaurant. But I think being customer facing, being in hospo allows you to really, really read people and get along with people and just kind of like understand body language and, cater to what that customer needs. And then I became fascinated about psychology, which is naturally the study of the human mind and human relationships. And I've always been very, very curious and inquisitive on that. And that was a natural part to me. I love talking to people, fascinated by how people think, feel, and act. And that natural curiosity definitely means that I'm exposed to a lot of conversations and exposed to conversations because I come from a place of curiosity. I just always was someone that asked lots of questions and wanted to know people's why. I'd sit on a train and just stare at people and wondering where they're off to and really like create these epic background stories of these strangers on a train. So yeah, I think that natural innateness of curiosity allowed me to be a great storyteller, but it also helped me to just speak to anyone and everyone, especially as you mentioned there. Lifeline, if for those that don't know, Lifeline is Australia's national suicide prevention and crisis hotline, 13 11 14, for anyone that feels that they need to speak to someone anonymous. It's an amazing service, amazing not-for-profit. And yeah, I was a telephone crisis supporter because I was studying psychology. And that situation right there, where when you pick up that phone and you have no idea who is on the other line, and your very job is to just listen and build rapport and like actually listen, right? Like we say we listen, but then there's actual attentive listening. And we were really taught to do that regardless of whoever was on that other line. So you do get very, very well equipped with how to communicate and how to build those relationships.
And like the listening part too that you just touched on, listening is so important. I believe it was last year or the year before now, I did TCI training, which is therapeutical crisis intervention. And one of the role plays that we had to do was someone on the other end of a phone, and we had to try and de-escalate the situation and get them to a point where we felt comfortable where they could last till the ambulance got there. And through that, I learned personally like how to learn and listen on like a deep level rather than like listening to respond, instead listening to understand and holding space for someone. And just being able to hold space for someone can hold so much more weight than actually trying to split advice back to them. Like both of them can be important, but the ability to listen plays such a big role in helping people.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That training sounds very similar to what we do on the phones at Lifeline, to be able to bring someone out of crisis and into a sort of more grounded state. So yeah, in that very act, rather than trying to fill silences, especially as a human, I think we like to feel it because it gets quite uncomfortable, the silences, but also wanting to, you're listening, but you're wanting to respond, right? Like you already got an answer crafted, you're already going, oh, but, and you're interjecting because you really want to speak. And sometimes it's unintentional, but actually sitting and pausing and really spending the time and acknowledging what that person is saying, but really hearing them. And more often than not, as you've kind of mentioned, people don't even want advice. People just like to have a sounding board to vent, to hold space, to talk about it. More often than not, when I've been in those real deep, dark sort of holes emotionally and with my mental health, I don't even think I've wanted to seek an answer, because I know for myself that, well, sometimes there is no answer. Sometimes you've just had a shit day. But being able to share it and exploring that storytelling piece and reflecting, a problem shared is a problem halved. And I think that's all that matters in that moment.
It makes sense, because that's why speaking up is so important, because I find in moments in the past where I have felt like I needed to speak to someone and express like something I'm going through, I usually find out the answer as I'm speaking. And just because I'm able to get out my mind to free up more space for more things to come in and to get more answers, or to get more drops of wisdom, or even just to be able to let it out of my mind in the first place. So like the ability to actually step up and speak up is something that's not easy to do, but the people listening, that is a step that you take, trust me, it's a huge step, and it's going to be something that will pay dividends in the future.
Couldn't agree more.
Like, because at the moment, in the last 5 years, I've worked as a case manager in mental health and youth work, and I want to get like your perspective of doing the work in that industry, but also working at Lifeline as well. What do you think has really helped you in terms of being able to be a support person for someone else? And I'm asking this in case someone's listening right now and they may have someone in their life that's struggling and they don't know what to do or how to cope with that situation. Do you have any bits of wisdom or any experience that you can share from yourself that could help someone?
Yeah, the number one thing is you don't have to, I want to squash the taboo that you need to be a qualified sort of mental health counselor or got a psychology background or done social work or case manager to be able to master these skills. Very often people go, how can I help? And you don't need to be in a professional instant. More often than not, someone that is struggling will rather turn to someone that's a personal relationship rather than a professional relationship. You can, hand on heart, people that if you go, hey, you should go see a psychologist, very, very rare. More often than not, people will go, the number one, the top ratio of people, percentage of people going to a psychologist is like they go once, and the returning of someone going back to a psychologist, it diminishes by like 70%, because most people don't continue that conversation. And so why I wanted to lead with that is, if you're a personal friend or a partner or a family member, you're more likely to get a better result than someone that is a professional. And to do that, it requires you to have courage. It requires you to sit in the mess. It requires you to not feel like you're going to have the answers and know what you're going to do. But as long as you come from sincerity, with true heart and love and compassion for someone because you really care, that's how you're going to be able to make some pretty epic change. And it might just start with a question like, how are you? Allowing that person to speak, but then digging deeper and being like, how are you really? I've noticed, insert a truthful, honest sort of experience. I've noticed that if, let's say, work colleague, I've noticed that you're coming to work a little bit later than normal, or I've noticed that you're a little bit more withdrawn in social settings, or you're not wanting to come to Friday knock-off drinks or anything like that. Is everything okay? Because your behavior's changed from when I noticed it here. And so something that's just super authentic, really real, and checking in on someone in a deeper level. During the water cooler talks, we're always like, how are you, mate? How are you going? And then people kind of go, nod, I'm good, and then keep walking. Your ability to stick in that discomfort and actually check in if intuitively you think something is up, I think that requires a lot of courage, but it can go leaps and bounds when someone that's vulnerable actually notices that actually this person really cares, or is trying to probe a little bit deeper from a place of genuineness and not gossip. And that could always encourage an open conversation. A lot harder with males too, right? Men still very traditionally need to go into sort of like fixing, problem solving, analytical processes, that kind of mentality, and less right brain, creative, emotional, and all of that. So some of those conversations as well can be really, really powerful when you can allow someone to turn into that vulnerability and lean into that.
Yeah, that's great, because the massive difference from the little change from how are you to how are you really. Because that really, like, it holds so much weight when you hear it for the first time when someone asks you that, because it ends up feeling like a permission slip, like the weight comes off your shoulders and you finally feel like you can open up. And I think too many people put too much pressure on their own shoulders when they try and support someone. So to really simplify it, like you said, it just makes so much sense. And I think just being able to have that conversation, knowing that this person is someone that means a lot to you, but you also mean a lot to them and they will open up to you more, or just giving them that stepping stool to be able to take the next step through you.
Mm-hmm. Another thing as well is, you don't have to, I think we kind of touched on this, but you don't have to have any answers. You don't have to give advice. More often than not, advice I actually discourage. I'd rather open with a, how can I help you, or what do you need from me, kind of open questions, or is there anything that I can do to help relieve some of this for a bit, or take a little bit of a weight off your shoulders? Because advice is very subjective. Advice is, well, this is what worked for me, and I'm going to tell you what worked for me, but it may not work for that person at all, because we have completely different contexts, completely different personalities, all the different things. So advice, I find, is always quite subjective. But if you want to give advice, be like, well, this is something that I experienced and how I did it. I'm sharing with it because it may help you as well. Take what you will and then discard what doesn't work.
Yeah, because like you said, it is very subjective, because we all have different interests, we all have different beliefs, different values. So one thing works for me might not work for you, Mel. Like, I absolutely love lifting weights, but I don't like doing yoga. So I'm not going to go do yoga. Instead, I can do weightlifting, but instead I'm going to get the exact same probably dopamine hit and feeling, but it's just doing something that really truly works well for me. So instead of pushing what you believe is best for them, asking them, what do you feel like I could do or help you with right now?
100%. And there is no right or wrong. Self-care looks whatever it needs to look like for you.
And like tracking back to earlier on, because I wanted to touch on this before we move on, because I think this is super important too. Like, just being able to observe and being super curious, something that you said that you do is, like, you're a very curious person. You like to observe, but you learn so much about yourself, like observing other people, observing the world, remaining curious, because you end up seeing a lot of reflections of the world within you. And then from there sparks a new thing within you to go and take out into the world and maybe make a change in the world or make a change within yourself. But just by being curious and observant of the world, you can learn so much, eh?
Yeah, I think I've always had the personality, even when I do coaching and I tell people to go out and taste things, because we create these examples or things where we haven't actually lived it. So for example, one huge one is, do people like oysters? That's always a conversation. You either love them or you hate them. There's no kind of sitting on the fence on it. And majority of the time when I do this in group settings, people that put their hand up for hating oysters, they cannot eat oysters. And then I go, keep your hand up if you've actually eaten one. And the amount of hands that actually go down because they haven't lived it, they haven't tasted it, they just make an assumption. Fair enough, you might eat it and then decide that you hate oysters. But the amount of people that create these opinions about themselves or their life or their journey when they haven't actually gone out to taste it, or when we look at someone and we create biases or judgment around people, again, when we don't have context. So for me, I love speaking with people or traveling. Traveling really opens up my curiosity because it helps me to understand people differently in their environment, in their circumstances. And why you probably love podcasting so much, as well as I love interviewing people, because that's when my curiosity is an all-time high. I kind of get to selfishly be inquisitive to kind of exactly get more download, understand what people are, why they think the way that they think, how they came to be. And then I take some of those like rich golden nuggets and then I apply it to my own life. And staying curious is it's paid off dividends for me through and through. I've met incredible people because I'm I just see people as they are. I really, really try to meet people where they're at and who they are. And I'm fascinated with a genuine curiosity about their lives. I actually, now that as I say that out loud, I think that experience really came from the family violence case managing, because in those high pressure situations, I was meeting in my line of work. So basically, when there was a perpetrator, they would offend, and we were the service that came and took commonly the woman, the wife or the mum and kids, and we took them to a safe house or a safe space. And I found in those situations, you had to leave all types of judgment out the door, because the people coming needed your help, were incredibly vulnerable, and there was no space for you to be like, well, you should just leave him. This is the 5th time you've been in this domestic violent relationship, and all of these kind of opinions, or don't you know what like you're doing to the kids, all of that kind of judgment that's so easy for us to say, but until you're actually in it and living and breathing it, you find that compassion and curiosity is the only things that get you through.
I love that so much, because it's like everyone's doing the best they can with the information they have at the current time. So being able to judge them in that moment is so unfair on them. And because at the end of the day, they're struggling, they don't know any other way. Like it's all they know, or they may be scared to go another way. And I love the analogy of the oyster as well. And especially when you reflect it back into yourself, especially when we have unhelpful beliefs about ourselves. It's like, all right, what's the evidence for that?
Yes,
Like
yes,
what's the evidence? Like, where's that
100%.
been proven?
Yeah. What's the most common one I get in the space is I feel like I'm a failure. I'm sure you've heard it before. I've lived it through as well, where the word failure comes up, or I feel like I'm not enough. And when we mirror that question, like, well, what evidence do you have that actually makes you this? Because this very word failure is such a subjective opinion. The word enoughness is like, well, compared to what? What are we comparing it to? Because you are enough, but I don't know what that enough means. And often we don't actually know. We just kind of say these things, and they become our identity, and they become our statement. And that's why I love communicating, because the language, the words that you say matter. The words that you say to yourself, the mindset, your thoughts, they matter. The words that come after I am, insert whatever it is that your belief system is, really dictates how your reality plays out.
It's like our words are self-hypnosis. And what we're saying, we are embodying those beliefs to create an identity.
Yeah, whether subconsciously or consciously, but the moment that it comes into your awareness that you've said these things and they don't match up, or there is no evidence, now it's your responsibility to create a new dialogue. You always have choice, or at least I've come from that framework. And I don't speak from that from like a look at me, I'm so high up. It's because I've lived through the trenches and gone through some pretty terrible, shitty times to then adopt a new mindset. So I know it's possible for people that go, well, it's easy for you to say, but I know it's possible because I was once that person that had no hope.
Like you're a perfect example of it. And like also men, and probably a lot of other people that we know that we've worked with, or just any friends or family that we've seen make that transition and make that shift. And especially like when people say to themselves, I'm not enough. And you took the words out of my mouth. It was like, so what is enough? Like, have you identified what enough is? And what does that version of yourself look like? And a lot of people don't even know the answer to that question. And I used to be that person in the past where I used to say, I'm not doing enough. I'm like, well, what does doing enough look like? And once I really mapped it out, I'm like, I'm already doing it. Just called up my mind. But really being able to challenge your beliefs as well, I think is important.
And if you can't do that, sometimes if we don't have the discipline or the skill set to just be super self-aware and self-regulated, I think it's incredibly important to just surround yourself around people that are doing that. Have a look at the people that you aspire to be, or that have once inspired you, or that you see as a role model, and try and really think from their perspective. The amount of times I've kind of gone, well, what would Richard Branson do in this situation? And I literally go to these mentors that I've never met in my life, that are just kind of these thought leaders in the world that we get so much access to these days because of digital. But I always go, how would they act? How would a billionaire act in this situation? How would, someone else think and feel when there's a high pressure situation? And that really can help me just do a bit better.
Then when you have like that visualization of something else, you can draw energy from it. I had a mentor of mine say something similar, and what he got us to do was to create a map of what our success looks like to us and us at the end goal, and then do as that person would. So in the moments where I don't feel like doing it, what would that version of me in the future that's achieved it all, what would that person do right now? And it's like, oh, well, he'll definitely do it, or he'll definitely do this, or he won't do this. And it's like, it really helps you dictate your life and stay on the path that you know will push you forward rather than getting stuck in those moments.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you become a really good manifestor or visualization, you know the path, you know what it is that you want. You can see it, touch it, feel it. And then all that's left is waiting for reality to catch up to your vision. And I think there's something really powerful about that, because we as humans have that ability of foresight. We can almost look, taste, feel, and act on what an ideal day would look like for us. And exactly that, like, how do we start emulating those behaviors and actions in mind and dress the way that we do or speak the way that we do before we're actually there yet?
It shows how powerful the mind is, because when you, for an example, I think this will hit with a lot of people. When you visualize a chocolate milk or a strawberry milk, trying to figure out which one you want to drink, you can actually visualize, and within your senses, you can taste it and you pick which one you want. Can you imagine that exact same thing with your own thoughts and beliefs that you're instilling into yourself? It's doing the exact same thing, like it's embedding within you. And that's why you
All
got
I
to be
can think
cautious.
is strawberry milk right now. I hope
How good
yes to the strawberry milk.
strawberry fig shake from Mac is the go-to.
That's it. That's it. But 100%, you can apply it to so many different things on how you want your reality to become. It's very, very powerful once you can master your mind and your emotions.
Yeah, that's why I love practicing visualization. Have you heard of this study done by neuroscientists where they got people playing basketball for visualization?
No, I would love to hear it. Tell me more.
I'll share it with you quickly. So, a group of scientists got together and they wanted to do a study on the impacts of visualization and how it can actually make us grow and evolve. So, what they did is they got 30 people in the room, split them into three groups of 10 people, and got them to shoot from the free throw line. And what they did is, so the first group of 10 people, they said, shoot from the free throw line every single day for 30 days, then come back in 30 days and we'll measure the improvement. The second group of 10, he said, don't do any physical practice, only do visualization practice for 30 days every day. Come back in 30 days and we'll see you've improved. And then the last group, he said, do no physical, no visualization, come back in 30 days. Anyway, at the end of the 30 days, the group that did no physical, no visualization got 0% improvement. The group that did the physical practice every day got 27% improvement. The group that did the visualization practice only got 26% improvement. So they got 1% behind the team that did the actual physical practice. That just
Yeah.
shows the power of our mind when we actually are visualizing things. And then on the other end of that, it's like imagine mixing the physical with the visual. And then can you imagine the results you'll get from that?
Yeah, that's really, really impressive. There's a lot of studies that actually do, like, what someone tells you to do as well, like the circumstances you're in can really shape the belief. There was a study that had Asian students, basically the teacher said to them on the test, it's like, this is the test that you're going to complete. Most Asian students that complete this do better and perform better than the rest of the communities. And that was the information that they gave them. And then another cohort, they said the same thing except opposite. So they said, here's your test, please fill it out. Now, most Asian communities or students that complete this, they do far worse than the general cohort and the general public and whatnot. And then one with no results at all. All the kids literally performed either better or worse based on that piece of information. And then it was a confirmation bias by what the teacher had told them. And so it's so interesting to see on a positive and a negative scale of how important language plays, or that visualization plays, in how you perform.
And it also ties back into what you're talking about earlier, like the importance of our environment. So if the people around us are instilling beliefs within to us, then we end up acting upon that and actioning that out and getting those results. And depending on the beliefs that other people put onto us, it shows how important it is to surround yourself with people that are going to be very helpful to yourself, where you want to go, and who you are.
Yeah. I think people listening to something like a podcast, I always say is like, you're already on that right track, right? Like there isn't someone that's not into personal development or having a growth mindset that is going to be on this podcast with you, Ryan, and be part of this journey with both of us, because they just wouldn't be tapped into it. But it's conversations like this, being a fly on the wall and learning and implementing, taking things from people just online that can really help you in this day and age. We just don't really have an excuse because we're so in touch with everything. Everything is a swipe away to be able to have access. I mean, there's pros and cons to that in itself, but yeah, really auditing, who your circle is and what you read, learn, and listen to.
Like it's never been this much accessible to be able to get the information and also network of other people. Like you can network with like-minded people in Latvia, on the other side of the world. Like it's mind-blowing on how you can curate your environment in person reality, but also within the online world too. Because at the end of the day, probably most or majority of people probably look at their phone the most. And when you are looking at your phone, that is your environment as well. So if you connect with a good environment on your phone, then in the real world as well, it's going to be so much beneficial. And I like the aspect of podcasting like yourself. You could probably go on a podcast with someone that's in America and be able to create that connection and network over there. Or myself, I can do a podcast with you and I believe you're in Melbourne. And it's like, it's so good that we're in this age where we can create environments through a online.
100%. I think like attracts like, and finding like-minded people as well has never been easier. You can literally Google knitting lessons with cats or something and you will find a community group that does what you do or that loves what you do, and you can tap in and join in on them, whether it's virtual or an in-person event. We've got so many platforms that you can kind of browse and attend networking events and attend things where you want to become a thought leader in, or I could go into a free sort of accounting event and go absorb things that I'm curious about. There's so many community groups now at the touch of our hand, and I think that's just so powerful.
You answered my question before I asked. I was literally about to ask you how can people find environments. That's perfect.
Yeah. There's especially if you're in Australia, it's a global platform anyway, but there's a ticketing platform called Eventbrite, EVENTBRITE, for those that don't know, but it has just events on events on events, and you can sift through it location wise, how close it is to you, whether it's online. You've got free events all the way to ticketed paid events, and you can really kind of just find your tribe and find your people, because there's a lot of people in the community putting out great stuff that you can freely attend.
Yeah, and they're everywhere, especially on the Eventbrite, on any kind of community, you can find something close to you that has your similar interest. For yourself, Mel, like talking about leadership just then, for yourself, you're a leader of your business and the work that you do. You're a leader of your life and how you operate. You're a leader in so many aspects of your life. What do you believe are some of the core values that you attach to leadership of life in general?
Conviction. I think for me, that word comes up because I'm so anchored in my purpose and my drive and the greater goal. Jay Shetty, I think, once said this, where it just really landed for me, where when you find your passion is for yourself, but when you find your purpose is for others. And it really landed for me because the things that I'm really passionate about fill up my cup. But when I'm leading from a place of purpose, I'm bringing an entire community and tribe with me. And a leader can't be a leader without followers. And I don't mean a vanity metric of Instagram followers, but I genuinely mean people that go, I really vibe with what you value. I love what you're heroing and we support you. A leader stands in the front and guides people and really points people to have hope. And I think a society without hope is no society at all. And so how can, as leaders, we instill hope and faith in something much greater than ourselves? I think that's the number one trait of being a great leader, is that we inspire people to take action without probably even doing so. We do it because they've mirrored it. We don't tell them to do it. They do it willingly because of how motivated a good leader guides them.
I love that, especially that saying you just said about passion is for self, purpose for others. Because when you go out there in the world and you contribute in any way, whatever it is, whatever someone's passion is, it really does, like, it makes an impact in the world, yes. But I feel like it's the one true thing that really gives you that certain feeling that you can't really compare to anything else, like that positive light up feeling within yourself, which then kind of then transpires into you wanting to keep doing it. It's like a thing that fills up your cup, so you got more to give.
Yeah, it's a it's a beautiful feeling. I say it's a very selfishly selfless gift when you give, because yes, you're contributing to society. Yes, you are sharing and giving, but at the same time, the things that help like fill up your cup, I always say, like, I'm in this industry of service. I'm always serving. I'm always like, how can I serve you? But it in that act of service, I feel incredibly fulfilled. So it's quite selfish in that sense, because the more that I serve and the more that I give and the more that I contribute in society, that's what gives me fulfillment and purpose in life. And I think for me, that's what greatness is.
I agree. It's like helpful selfishness. So like the more you
Yeah,
can do for others, it fills
exactly.
you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's awesome because I like how you talked about before too with the community aspect too, because I love the whole concept of community over competition and like being able to collab with other people doing similar things, building each other up and getting each other up to higher stages. Because the more we all help each other, the more impact we can make in the world and the more we can create a positive change in the world. And that's why I love how, with yourself, like how you bring communities together and you like to collab because it's so important in terms of the ripple effect of the positive impacts it can truly make.
I think in this day and age as well, like collaboration is a necessity in business and in success. Collaboration over competition has been something that is going to completely triumph, where you need partnerships, you need people around you. We are interdependent people as a society. We're called, social beings because we're social beings. We need our tribe. It's the very thing that's allowed us to stay on top of the food chain, is because we're really, really good at coming together and building something. We're really good at finding like-mindedness, cultural similarities, communities to then fight wars and do all these amazing things and build architectural buildings and towns and cities and governments, all of that. There's obviously a negative to it in terms of we can also are capable of totally destroying it. But for the most part, on the macro, we still all get along. We could all be dead by now, but collectively, we actually do collaborate in every single day. And I think for me, if I can help other people build, they like help me build, and that's how we kind of all succeed together. There's enough success at the top for everyone to eat.
Yeah, it's like unlimited by the end of the day. Like we can all get there depending on what our success is and where we want to go. It's like me with my podcast. If I have a guest on and I know that this specific guest would be really good for this person's podcast that I'm friends with, 100% I'll message them. I'm not trying to keep secrets, like no whispers and stuff. Like, no, I really want to help the world in a way where it's very fruitful. And I feel like the way to get more fruits is to plant more seeds, and to be able to plant more seeds, we need more hands on deck to plant them. And it continues from there.
Yeah.
So for this year, like what do you feel like is a big mission of yours for this year?
A big mission.
Or just a mission?
Well, interestingly enough, so every year I always have a word for the year. I don't know if other people do that, but 2023 last year, my word was expansive. And in 2022, my word was action. And I've always had these real driven, powerful, go-getter moves and like words, because I guess that was just the time of the life of my entrepreneurial journey. Now, 7 years into my business and into my entrepreneurship journey, 2024's word is patience. And I've just never thought I would get there. And those that know me and are very close to me, when they were like, patience, Mel, like really? And I'm like, but don't confuse patience with slowing down, but patience that everything that we have worked towards is coming for us. It just takes more time than we ever expect. I think people expect it to be hard, or the thing that you want to achieve is hard. They expect that, but I don't think they ever expect it to be as long as it is. It almost double, triples, or takes way longer than we would like to. So this year, I think my mission is actually to find groundedness in patience and understanding that I don't need to be in such a rush to get to the next goal or to the next target, because it's coming.
It's coming. It's going to happen.
Yeah. So it's this sense of knowing and surrendering to however long that it takes. I think it only just clicked to me this year, really, at the start, that this really is the infinite game. And by that is, the aim of the game is to just keep playing and to just keep going. Whereas before, I think it was like, I don't know what I thought, but it's like some big win that never ended up being a big win because the work's always there tomorrow. And so, yeah, the mission this year, for those that I run a lot of events, we do a lot of business, we help a lot of our clients, I do coaching as well. But this year for me, I think, is just serving people, continuing that journey, but from a place of real patience and groundedness, which I haven't actually achieved because my life is pretty chaos.
Patient endurance, you'll get there.
Yeah. What's your mission
For this year? My mission for this year is to expand this podcast and just create more impact in a positive way and to reach more people, because I feel like the bigger this podcast gets, that means in return it's reaching more people, which means then the information is getting to more people and hopefully helping them. And then the back end of that, I'm doing in-person podcast events as well in front of an audience, because I want to get out there in the community and be face-to-face with people and actually engage face-to-face with people that listen to this podcast. So I think for this year, I know for this year, it's to really expand and grow and just become bigger and better.
100%. I love that. I was just about to say, you're at your 3-digit podcast kind of leap now. You've done more than 100 episodes, which is more than what 98% of anyone that's done podcasts can actually say. But taking it into those kind of real life live events, there's something so special about that I think your brand is going to explode by being able to deliver those real touchable, tangible events that people have so craved to do.
Yeah, thank you. But I also agree with that. Like on the back end of the big C that happened as well, I feel like people are really craving connection.
Yeah.
And I like absolutely love, like, because a lot of the work I do at the moment is in the community. So I really love being amongst people and being in events and also being able to contribute in some way, but having the idea to put my name behind it and host it and get people together, like a panel of people. And I'm sure you probably get the same lighten upness with inside the you. When you're planning an event, you get so many people together, like, oh, this person's going to be awesome. This person's going to be awesome. Then all these people are going to come. Like, it's so exciting.
I think the creativity as well with you leading those events and directing it is your ability to connect all the people that you've had in your life, but then connecting them that they otherwise won't have met without you being the bridge to those relationships. So if you were to do a fireside chat, you being incredibly selective because you know the intricacies of each of their personalities and what they could bring to the table, essentially, and having those real round table conversations. So many executives still do it to this date, round tables, masterminds, where you get a bunch of exciting brains to come together and collaborate. And then the end product is something that never could have happened unless those 5 brains and, ideas all came into the one room. That stuff lights my heart on fire. So yeah, that's what I think you're going to get really good at.
Thank you. Especially masterminds. They're awesome. I ran a mastermind for about a year, and this is like in between lockdown stages up in Brisbane. And like you said, like the ability to get multiple brains together to brainstorm ideas and help each other's businesses to grow or tell people's personal lives to evolve and grow. Like so much change can happen when you get around the environment of people like we were talking about earlier that really believe in you and push you to get to where you want to get to in life.
And I think when you find the right people, they're your equals, so they're your peers as well. So as much as they might be different in different stages of life, but you kind of come together because you've got this core value of helping each other grow. So it's not, I find in those environments, it's not like, oh my God, I'm so intimidated, this person's so much better than me, or like all of that. It's kind of like everyone really has their own genuine pieces of advice or thoughts to give and share, and really helps you go, I've never thought of it that way, or I've never seen that potential, and it was right in front of me. But you kind of just need that one person to make the penny drop.
Like sometimes in life, you can be doing the pattern for so long, and one person can say something to you about that pattern. You're like, oh yeah, it's so true. How did I not realize that? Like just from someone else being able to observe your situation and offer
Agreed.
that to you, it's like, wow, it can really help you take a lot of shortcuts and help you avoid a lot of pain as well.
Yeah. You only know what you know, right? So the opposite of that sounds, without sounding too smart, you don't know what you don't know. And that's really important too, to kind of be the student and to be the learner and to be a sponge and to be coachable or to be willing to pivot. There are amount of times where I've had conversations where I go, oh, I'm now going to change my opinion and thought on that topic because I now have new pieces of information or a new perspective on it. And I think that's really beautiful, to be able to be flexible instead of like, well, these are my thoughts or this is what I'm doing and I can't pivot. The very thing about a growth mindset is your ability to change.
100%. It's like when people do project their own ideas onto you in terms of like challenging your beliefs, instead of getting emotional about it, instead become more logical and really observe like how would that make sense to myself, and then really observe the idea if what they say is true, but really sit with it instead of straight away clicking your fingers and snapping out of it and ignoring them. Like
Mm.
see if that or anything they said actually held weight.
You might reject it,
Yeah.
and I think that's where some of those real healthy debates come into play, where the ability to hold conversations and perspective on both ends, and not attack a person about them, and actually just have a really healthy conversation about why two parties think differently and what type of opinions and evidence they have to argue both sides. And rather than going, well, you're right, I'm wrong, actually just opening it up and getting more curious to why they think like that.
Yeah, and you can learn so much when both sides meet, because I feel like if both sides don't talk and each side doesn't have an opinion, that's when like bad things happen, when war happens or anything that's really negative. Because when we stop talking, it becomes physical. And it's like we need to be able
Yeah.
to elaborate and talk about our ideas, talk about our beliefs, so we can find common ground and come into the middle. Because if we're not coming to the middle, one person's on the left, one person's on the right, and it's just divide and separation.
Yeah, and there's confirmation bias. If you're always hanging around people that just continuously agree with you, agree with you, agree with you, and never challenge you on any of your thoughts and beliefs, you just assume things are happening because of that confirmation bias, that you go and seek evidence or you go and seek studies that back your argument, but you're never willing to look at the other side.
You're probably similar to me being curious, because I'm super curious too. And like when I find information or when I hear information, I don't take it for surface level. Like for some reason, I've got to try and identify more about it and really find the core of it.
I actually encourage you to go look for the opposite side, like go completely the other way to see where it is. What they say, there's especially when it comes to war, there's three sides. There's one side, the other, and then there's the truth. But the truth is the first thing to go. The truth is always the first kind of thing to blur and disappear, and then it's a fight and it's a war. But yeah, really thinking about what other parties are thinking can only kind of give you more insight.
Hmm. And talking about insight and wisdom and looking within yourself, but also looking externally, what do you really feel like helps you, or what do you do for yourself to help you learn and grow? Like whether it's information, whether it's wisdom that you need, or experience that you have to go and seek. How do you continue to learn and grow?
I'm really good at being in the discomfort zone. Like I'm really good at getting uncomfortable. The moment that I feel that I'm like cruising and like it's good, I am psychotic. I will like create an event that overwhelmingly challenges me, or like run a mastermind or a retreat. This year, recently, I've just started doing live events and closing from stage and being a platform speaker. So I'm always out there kind of wanting to improve my skill set and test where I'm at with things. And I think there's many things that I fail and fall flat on my face with. But you don't learn when you succeed. When everyone's cheering you on and you get that massive high and you get that massive win, yes, it's amazing and it feels really, really great, but you don't actually learn anything. Whereas my biggest lessons have been having the humility to quote unquote fail, or having the humility to not be perfect, and coming out and being like, that wasn't my intention to ever hurt anyone, but hey, I didn't get it right. They're kind of the moments that I really look at, and they're the moments that I think build not only my resilience, but it builds my character. So being comfortable in the discomfort.
Yeah, like, 'cause you learn so much in the quotation of fail, because you learn a lot more in that stage than you do if you're just continuously winning. And it's like, are you really pushing yourself far enough to get to a point where you can expand, or are you staying super comfortable, like you said? But the ability to keep going out there and to continue doing new things, you learn so much in the fails that really expands the whole mission to create something bigger, because you learn what doesn't work, you learn what not to do, you learn so and so and so. So then when you eventually craft it into this beautiful masterpiece, people then see it and like, oh shit, this is amazing.
Yeah, well, failure means you're in the arena for success. It actually is a prerequisite for anyone. Anyone, if you study like the most successful people, have a whole road of failures, arguably. Thomas Edison, 1,000 times to create a light bulb, or like even if you look at the product of Dyson, the bagless vacuum cleaners, it was his 600th try before the Dyson came to be. And now I feel like most people, I'm old, I get really excited over a vacuum, but most people, like, that's now the golden standard. And it's like, imagine if you gave up at 599, the Dyson would never exist. Imagine, all these kind of products that have had so many failures along the way, but every single time, if you can kind of go, okay, what's the data? What's the learning there? What can I extract? That's where you get the most valuable, rich learnings.
And so many people think you have to be amazing to start, but you have to start so you can become amazing. And for me, my first 30 episodes of this podcast was a fail. And not in terms of the people that came on, they were great, but just in terms of me being able to really like interview and really be able to hold a conversation and make it direct and flow. Like, I was terrible, but with the practice and continuing to do it, continuing to show up, I then eventually got to a point where I can say that I'm proud of where I've gotten to and where I am, but just knowing that continuous growth is still to come.
I think also having the humility to go, my first 10 episodes, in your case 30, probably a bit much now, but to be like, I'm going to suck at this. I'm going to be shit at this for the first bit. And I'm okay with that, because everyone looks back at their first videos or their reels, or like when you talk on stories to camera, like they're all cringe. Like, what? And then once you kind of accept that your first few are going to be shit, then you get better. If you look at videographers, their first edits are never going to be as good as their professional career ones, or their first pieces of artwork is never going to be good as the end result. It requires you to have the discipline to practice your craft. It requires the hours. It requires it not to be easy for you to become a professional in something.
And I feel like if you don't look back and cringe, then you probably haven't grown as much as you should have.
Yeah. And I think everyone looks back and it's like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
And you can have a little chuckle and a laugh, but like when you were in it, you're like, I really thought I was cool.
Yeah.
I thought I was nailing it.
Yeah, I thought I was the shit.
Yeah, exactly. But you become 100%, you become a better listener as you do more and more interviews. You become more grounded and centered in knowing how you can hold space and interview. Just so everyone knows, like before we even went online with this and recording, Ryan was like, well, I don't really have any set questions. We just kind of go with the flow. I'm like, that's such a credit to you and your backbone, because the nerves are what makes you have to hold that skeleton, framework and go, these are my set questions and I have to do it. Whereas as you get more and more experience, you trust yourself and you back yourself that you're going to be able to take these conversations with a complete stranger for an hour plus. That's not actually that easy, but that comes with practice.
It becomes the repetition of actually doing the thing. Because it's like, if you look at a gym analogy, how you expect to grow your biceps if you only train them once a month? So you got to repetitively do the thing and you'll eventually become better at it. And if anyone listens to my first ever episode, like, it's like the audio of it's bad, because what I did was, it was me and my mate at the time. He was a co-host for the first 5 episodes. But for the first ever episode, we had one microphone. We put it on the middle of a table in the city, in the library in the middle of Brisbane City. It's probably like 500 people in this library, and we're talking into it, and you can hear like 500 people talking in the background. But if I didn't start at that point, I wouldn't have got to this point. And probably with yourself, with the work that you do, if you didn't take that first step, you wouldn't have been able to experience all these amazing things you've experienced over the last 7 or 8 years. But being able to make that decision and making that choice to take the first step and then continue taking steps after that got you to where you've got to now, and given you all the amazing experiences that you had along the way.
Yeah, you do not have to look at an entire staircase, right? And go, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. Look at all of the things I have to achieve. Just start with that first step. Just start with the first step of that staircase and then progress. Start with today and see what you can do today. My very first keynote, I completely bombed. And my first keynote was probably to 20 people. It was a free event, 20 people. And you could see in the footage, like I was holding the notes and the notes were shaking. They were just, because I was so anxious and so nervous and, but exactly like you said, I had to get through that to become able to find my voice and then be able to then speak now with such conviction and confidence and articulation. But that is because I've done the work. I've done my time. I'm talking a decade of practicing sharing and storytelling and being able to give advice. Like you need to do the time.
It's like confidence comes from the action of doing the thing.
100%.
And it's like you said about focusing on the first step. I guarantee when a child tries to walk, it's not thinking about running and be like, "All right, I'm not going to walk."
The baby analogy, I love the baby analogy, because if anyone, I don't have kids myself, but to all the parents out there that, you see your baby go from crawling and then they go to, they're holding onto the couch and your hand, and then they go and take that very, very first step. And it's so exciting and everyone records it. And then the baby falls over straight away after that one step because it doesn't have balance. You're not going, oh, well, you failed. That was crap. Don't do that again. Let's just give that up. It just doesn't happen. But then as we become adults and as we grow into society and our environments, I think we get more and more self-conscious. We get more and more fear of rejection. Worthiness comes into play. There's so many things that as adults we need to then unlearn to go back to those behaviors of, well, when you're a baby, like, how curious are you? You shove everything in your mouth. All limbs and everything go into your mouth. But it's like, how do we go back to these really core essence of what makes us human, which is we try and we don't give up until we walk. We don't give up until we find our voice, until we get what we want when we're a screaming baby. Like, we're actually quite curious, playful beings. And then as we grow up, we kind of get desensitized to that.
It's like we lose our curiosity and lose our resilience, and also our grit as well. Because for yourself, has it been 8 years? Have you said you've been doing your business?
Sure have.
Yeah. So the grit,
Yeah.
the grit that takes for 8 years to continue
And
going.
I still feel like a startup. And that's also okay. I think it's also okay that to look at my friends or like my neighborhood over there and go, wow, that person's turned their business into $1 billion empire and now they're hiring 600 employees and they've really scaled. And then for my journey, we've got 6 employees and it just, I still feel like a small business, but understanding that you're not on anyone else's timeline but yours. And where we kind of said before, like, I have this real deep sense of knowing that it's coming, whatever that goal or success looks like to me. It's just having the patience to wait a long enough time horizon.
I love that, because you don't have to trust something when you know it.
The lion doesn't have to roar in the jungle. It just knows it's the lion. Like, it doesn't need to be the loudest and the biggest and whatnot. Everyone knows.
Yeah, it's not sitting there thinking of beliefs like, oh, maybe I'm a peacock. It knows it's a lion.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. It's not having an identity crisis that we all, midlife crisis. Do I want this? Do I not? Just choose the thing and run with it.
Yeah, be it. Before we finish up here, I'd like to give you the opportunity. Do you have any final words you'd like to share? Do you have anything you'd like to share in terms of business as well, or anything personal? Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we covered some really great things. Maybe just to add into the conversation that we've just had in the last hour or so is really understand that we don't have context of other people's lives. And that's where my ability to have compassion and non-judgment really comes in, going, I don't have full context of anyone's life other than mine. And so it's pretty normal for people to get misjudged or just confused or have an opinion to be like, you're not where you're meant to be, or like putting those pressures on you. But people don't have context for where your life is at. And so be really kind to yourself. Be really compassionate that you've probably made every single day and you've gone through every single hard day to get to where you're at now. And we all don't know, because we've all been living our own lives and you've been carrying on doing your own thing. And I think that leading with that is so powerful. So pat yourself on your back and really acknowledge that.
Well said. Mel, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Ryan. Look forward to next one.
Me too.